Welcome to this edition of the Arrow Flinger Reports. Today our topic of discussion is the Transportation Improvement Act of 2010, which comes before the voters in July on the referendum ballot. TSplost is a short version of the Transportation Investment Act of 2010. Around here, the newspaper editor and the local county commission chairman are calling it the Transportation Improvement Act, terminology that I've used. And that's pretty good because the legislation talks about improving transportation. And it's got a lot of variables that a lot of folks need to consider before they vote for it. The first question we need to ask is, do we really need an entirely new level of government? Because the TSplost sets up regional governments throughout the state. In this case, we're in the central Savannah River area, which is a 13-county area in east central Georgia. One key consideration for voters is that what we're being faced with is taxation without representation. Because in the case of Lincoln County, we have no representation on the executive board of the CSRA region that will disperse these funds. Another aspect of the TSplost is that if you're a resident of a county that turns this bill down, it won't matter if 50% plus one of the voters in the whole region approve it. It will go into effect anyway, regardless of how your county votes. One situation that we have to be pretty cognizant of is the political makeup of the executive board for the CSRA. Because out of the 5 members, a majority is controlled by municipalities or urban counties like Richmond County, Columbia County, and the city of Thompson. For me, one of the most objectionable things about the Transportation Improvement Act is that it is a 14% increase in the total sales tax rate. And as a frugal saver, I'm very concerned about that because at 14%, your cost of living will double in 5 years. Savers have to be very careful about incurring any cost that goes up 14% because the cost doubles in 5 years. And for another thing, this tax will go up in lockstep with inflation-driven cost of living like food and energy, the things that are most affected by inflation. Folks in Lincoln County have some of the longest commuting distances in the state of Georgia to get to and from work, and will incur tremendous fuel costs. The DOT and state economists produce studies showing how much revenue will be generated by the Transportation Improvement Act. But I took a different angle. I took the Department of Revenue's sales tax revenues for Lincoln County for a year, 2010, to project how much sales tax revenue that the county would get with just a 1% tax increase, of which it would have free use. And I came up with a number of about $730,000. So if we just had a clear-cut 1% sales tax that was dedicated to Lincoln County alone, we would have total control of the money, and we'd also have more money than we're going to get out of this transportation tax. The projected tax revenues that the economists and DOT came up with are tremendously overstated because they use historic revenue forecasts and revenue statistics. And by doing so, they ignored the fact that over the last 5 years, state revenues have been down to flat. Governor Sonny Perdue, in his last year in office, rammed through the Transportation Improvement Act of 2010. And this was after Sonny called the State Department of Transportation an agency that was guilty of Enron accounting. In 2008, DOT underwent a huge scandal in which they lost track of their funding and their commitments for highway construction funds. And it was in the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars. So if we can't trust DOT to take care of the funds in the past, how can we trust them to take care of these funds? We had custody of the tire fund, but the legislature took all that money and spent it elsewhere. For another thing, 1% of the tax money that the DOT collects in sales taxes goes to things other than transportation. And then we have it across the state. DOT is spending millions of dollars planting trees and shrubs all up and down the highways. Now, I would suggest that we might be able to dispense with some of those costs before we go to the extent of passing a new 1% tax. One of the craziest aspects about this TSplost regime is that it sets up this 13-county region whereby 12 other counties, rural counties in Columbia County, are married to a very dysfunctional, arguably corrupt Augusta-Richmond County. Now, this is a county that recently built $50 million of buildings on land it didn't own. And that very project was predicated on a second Hyatt hotel that was supposed to come to downtown. And it was going to be built on land funded by the manufacturer of male enhancement devices. Imagine that. So we're being asked to join in marriage to a county that cannot manage its money. $5 to $10 million in deficits. Spending that's out of control. Do we really want to have a part of that? For another thing, Richmond County has a lot of manufacturing plants. And one of the bills that's currently in the hopper at the General Assembly is to give the manufacturing plants a huge new tax exemption on electricity and energy used in manufacturing. And the DOT economists have estimated that this will cost our combined region $11 million over the 10 years that this tax is in effect. So get this, here we have an act in which some counties don't have a vote on the executive board. The citizens don't really have a vote because they can be overwhelmed or countered by voters in other counties. And then we're held open for extortion because if we don't pass the thing, we're going to lose our state funding. I don't know about you, but this is the most hideous, objectionable bill that I think I've ever seen. But there's hope in defeating it. Early voting starts Monday, July 9th, and continues through Election Day, July 31st. And I hope everybody will turn out and vote no on TSplost.